Hello, friends. Welcome to Kavita's classroom. And today's topic is very important as well as very interesting. And it's very much liked by the students of ECO as well because it's very simple and scoring. So let's begin with the same. This is theory of demand. And before proceeding, again, the same request do like, share, and subscribe. So when we begin with the topic, the very first thing is what comes across to your mind when it is the word demand. What flashes? So the words which flash across are desire, demand, wish, desperation, right? And maybe a few more words which give you somewhat similar meaning. These may be similar, but these are not the same, especially in terms of economics, because when we talk about wish can be any weird wish, to land on moon and all, right? But if you are able to have that, it's backed up by your purchasing power, buying capacity, willingness, everything, then only it becomes something important for the makers, for the producers, whether they should be producing something for you because you're wishing. It means when we talk about demand is a technical term, not merely the wish, and it has to have the sufficient purchasing power and ability to spend. So, the demand for a commodity is the desire to buy a commodity backed up with the sufficient purchasing power as well as willingness. If, for example, if purchasing power is missing, then only willingness will result into anything. I am willing to buy maybe a chartered plane. I'm not able to. So that is not a valid statement for economy because they are not to make any chartered plane for me because I'm not really the potential buyer for the same. Right? So sufficient buying power is important. At the same time, willingness. Willingness means you would have seen many a times, many people are there who have the purchasing power, who have the money, but they don't feel like spending. Spendthrift are there, misers are there. So whatever they say, that is also not taken very seriously because they would not eventually be the potential customers, right? So for demand to be technical, we must have the ability to pay and willingness to pay. Okay. Now, demand and quantity demanded, these are two different words. Demand can be at different prices, means if the price is this, the demand is this. If the price falls to this, the demand rises. If the demand and price is again something different, demand is something different. So the whole set is nothing but demand. But when we talk about quantity demanded, that talks about a particular price and what at that particular, you know so for example, at price 4 the demanded quantity is 20 units, right? So this is the quantity demanded at this price. Otherwise the whole schedule talks about demand when we're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and relevant quantity also is given to us, right? So the whole is demand, but when we are talking about one particular instance, that becomes the quantity demanded at particular price, right? Demand schedule. As before also I've talked about schedule, as and when we come across here in ECO, we mean to have a tabular representation. So whenever we're talking about demand schedule means we need to have the representation between the price and the quantity. Okay, so the table relating to the price and quantity demanded is called demand schedule. This can be of two types, individual as well as market. So when we talk about individual, it's only one quantity column is given to you because we're talking about one particular individual. So we see generally so that when the prices are rising, the demand is falling. So 1, 2, 3, 4 gives you the quantity demanded as 4, 3, 2, 1. And these two columns represent the individual demand schedule. When it comes to market, just for the sake of simplicity and convenience, we have assumed that there are two people in the market who are buying, right? So customer A and B. So the market demand would be the sum total, the linear summation of A and B. So if at price 1, consumer A is willing to buy 4 units, the consumer B finds it all the more conducive and wants to buy 5 units, right? Similarly, at price 4, consumer A or 1 wants to have just 1 unit of the same, but consumer B wants to have 2 units. So at this particular price, what's the demand in the market? Assuming that there are only 2 consumers A and B in the market, so we have 1 plus 2 getting 3. So 3 is the market demand when the price of the commodity is quoted at 4. Then we have demand curve and its slope. Curve always is nothing but the graphical presentation. And what are we going to present? Whatever information we had in the schedule. What was there? It was the relationship between P and Q. Right? So when we talk about individual, similarly we have individual as well as market demand schedule. Individual means we would have quantity on the x-axis, price on the y-axis. So we are just taking the same table 1, 2, 3, 4 and 4, 3, 2, 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4 is the quantity and 1, 2, 3, 4 is the price and the quantity for this price is this, right? So it's one and the same thing. You can write anyways because it's going to give you the same figures. So we would have a downward sloping demand curve. Mind you, we call it downward sloping. We also call it negatively sloping. Negatively sloping means falling down. Negatively sloping. Or we have it falling downwards. So there are so many terms in which we explain the same, right? And when we talk about market, it's a sum total, the linear summation of both. So if we are taking the same previous example, we had first individual demand curve, the second individual demand curve. And when we just sum these two up, like at this 4, when the price is 4, individual 1 is asking for 1 unit and this is asking for 2 units. So what would be the market demand? Market demand would be 3 units, right? So similarly, we have simply added it up. Generally, we don't need to have this scale, and if the students are giving simple this way, like this is customer A, this is customer B, so we just need to keep this in mind that the market demand should be shown flatter, and that is the market demand. And when we talk about the slope of demand curve, slope, what do we mean by slope? We have read in the previous chapter, the change on y-axis with respect to the change on x-axis is the universal formula of slope. And when we talk about the demand curve, what do we have on y-axis? We have price here and we have quantity here. So what do we get as the slope? The delta P oblique the delta Q. So this is going to be the slope of demand curve. Now that it is negatively related, means with the rise in price, the quantity falls. With the fall in price, the quantity rises. So we have a negative of delta P by delta Q. Negative is just symbolic of the inverse relationship between P and Q. Right. Moving ahead, we have this is the demand curve. So if we want to show it diagrammatically, how do we show? We have taken just 2 reference points, A and C here, right? So, and this is point B. So delta P by delta Q, this is how we show the slope with respect to the reference points A and C. Okay, change on the y-axis with respect to change on the x-axis. Let me explain the same to you. It says that at some particular point of time, this is the relationship, means at this price, this quantity is demanded. But when the price falls to P dash, the quantity rises to Q dash, right? So with this change, what is the slope? Slope means it measures the change on y-axis with respect to the change on x-axis. So when this change of price happens, so the change in price is this much and the change in quantity is this much. And when we express it in P by Q form, this becomes our slope minus AB by BC. AB by BC. This is A, this is C, and this is B. Now comes the most important point here, because this becomes the backbone of the whole chapter, because this gives you the concepts which are going to be used for pictorial presentation as well as for the explanation part, and again most often asked in the examination. What do you mean by the term demand function or the determinants of demand? See this expression, demand of X is a function of all these factors. What does it mean? It means that there's a functional relationship between left hand side and right hand side. And what do we mean by functional relationship? Any change brought in these factors, whatever are mentioned here, if there is any one factor changing out of these, right, this would bring a change in the demand of the commodity. So that's why it's a functional relationship, it's live relationship, right? So what is this? It says the demand of X is a function of price of X, price of related goods, income, taste and preferences, and expected prices in the future. Let's discuss one by one. So the very first is price, own price of the good, right? If we are talking about the demand of X commodity, we are talking about the price of X commodity itself. So I hope you know it very well, and it's very much self-explanatory. When we go in the market, we do see when the things are expensive, the demand is down, but when the things are cheaper, the demand goes up. So it simply says that there is a opposite relationship, inverse relationship between the price and the quantity. So it talks about the inverse relationship, and it says this is nothing but is called the law of demand, which would be dealt in great details later also, right? And it has also used a term other things remaining the same or other things being equal. So what do we mean by other things? Other thing means these four factors which are other than its own price. The second factor is price of related goods. And when we talk about related goods, there are two sets of related goods which are there in this syllabus, right? Substitutes, which substitute each other, which are replaced by each other, which are used in place of each other. For example, tea and coffee, right? Cola and Limca. So all these things are means cold beverage for any other cold beverage, hot beverage for any other hot beverage, right? Pen, any brand for other pen of any brand. So when we get the things which are substitutable, these are substitute goods, right? For example, they say they have talked about tea and coffee. So how does it happen? Let's derive it. Instead of cramming it, let's derive it. Say the price of tea rises. So what is going to be the impact on the quantity of coffee by this, right? Listen, whatever happens to tea, just hold it for a while. Coffee people have their own demand. But because now tea has gone expensive, some people from tea will come here to coffee as well. So it means the demand of coffee would have risen on account of coffee drinker as well as tea drinkers. Okay. Take another example. You would be able to relate more with 5-star and Dairy Milk. So let's talk about price of 5-star, right? And the quantity of Dairy Milk. Okay. If the price of 5-star rises, what happens to the quantity of dairy milk? Quantity demanded of dairy milk. Those who are taking dairy milk would definitely keep on doing the same. But those who had been taking 5-star now would switch to dairy milk because now 5-star becomes expensive for them. Right? So demand of dairy milk would increase not because there is a change in the price of dairy milk, because there is a change in the price of other thing. Right? So here we see that the direction of change is the same. With the price change in one good, the demand of the substitute good rises. But the opposite happens in the complementary goods. And when we talk about complementary goods, we have pen and ink here, right? We have car and petrol. So what is the relationship? Like when the price of petrol rise, what happens to the quantity demanded of car? Think about it. Petrol prices rise, right? And petrol has to be there in the car to run the car, right? It means the quantity demanded for car would fall because then driving car would be expensive phenomenon. Okay, so when we are talking about the joint demand, the things which are demanded together. So these are complementary goods which are used together. They, right? So pen and ink, bread and butter. So these can be examples, right? So here we have when the price of one commodity rises, because they are to be used together, so the whole packet becomes expensive. Hence, the demand of the other thing also falls, right? So here, mind you, in this price of related good, the impact on quantity is coming on account of price of some other good, not the same good. Okay, and this is most often chosen in examination, right, for by the paper setters. Then we have the income of the consumer. So fair, when we're talking about income, right? Income is talked about in terms of normal as well as inferior goods. Normal goods means the routine things which we are using, right? And it has got a positive income effect. What do we mean by positive income effect? When our income rises, we tend to buy the things more. If we're talking about food, groceries, shoes, clothes, or anything which generally we are using. It's not talking about any quality parameter as of now, right? But when we talk about inferior goods, the income effect is negative. What does it mean? Those things which we are using as a compromise because we have less of money, but when our money rises, we tend to buy a better thing and we tend to leave those inferior goods. That's why income effect is negative in inferior goods, because with rise in income, we switch to normal goods and we leave inferior goods. On the other hand, if there is fall in the income, because it's a compromised situation, so our consumption of the inferior goods tends to rise, right? So normal goods are those goods in case of which there is a positive relationship between the income and the quantity demanded, and here it's a negative relationship between the income and the quantity demanded. That's why we say it carries the positive income effect and it carries the negative income effect. Normal goods may or may not be essentials of life, but inferior goods are generally the essentials of life, like coarse grain and coarse cloth. In case of normal good, there is always inverse relationship between own price and the quantity demanded. This is called the law of demand. And when we talk about inferior goods, the law of demand fails. We'll talk about this also. Like law of demand says, with rise in price, the quantity has to fall. Right. But inferior goods, we do have the situations when, irrespective of the rise in the price, the quantity again rises. Right. There is a special category of inferior goods called Giffen goods. If there is any reference, I'll just give a note of it later on. Right. So next next determinant is the taste and preferences. Very much clear. If we have a taste for something, the demand would be higher. If we do not have that taste for something, demand would go down. And it is most often affected by the advertisement, some brand ambassadors, some heroes, some Bollywood personalities. The things which are there in the fashion, taste, trend are liked most, and vice versa is also true. And then the expectations. Now, imagine I'm giving you a situation that you are to buy something, and suddenly you get to know through your friends that tomorrow onwards there is a sale on that thing. So, what is going to be the effect of that expectation of price fall today on the quantity today? The quantity today would fall because you would hold that purchase today and you'll better go tomorrow because you would have a better bargain. On the contrary, you had to go for shopping, right? And one of your friend tells that the sale which was there for last 10 days is going to get closed by the day in today. So when the expected prices are rising, right? When the prices are expected to rise, say tomorrow onwards. So what would happen on today's demand? Today's demand would rise. Oh, why not to avail the opportunity? Because tomorrow onwards it's going to be expensive phenomena for me. So this is going to be the relationship between for expectations, the same side. If the expected prices are to fall, the quantity demanded would be falling today. And if they are to rise, that would be rising. Then market demand function. Mind you, market is made up of the customers, the individuals, right? So all the concepts which we have studied till this point, these five are individual demand determinants, right? So market means all these along with two other. And what are they? One is the population size. Simple it is. If there is high population, the market demand would be higher. If the population of that area is low, the market demand would be low. Right. Sometimes we talk about the composition also. Like if in that very area the students are more, then the stationery items would be demanded more. If the elderlies are more, maybe the dentures, the walking sticks would be demanded more. So composition also is a concept of population size. Then we talk about the distribution of income. Whenever there is equitable distribution, that's always healthy. Equal distribution or equitable distribution, right? That leads to distribution, that leads to a better demand trend. But if we find that it's not equitable, means people are either very poor or very rich, so in that case the demand would be lesser. Why? Because the demand would be coming just from the wealthy, healthy, wealthy, strong section. I just mean to say that when income is distributed evenly, the demand would come evenly from all across. But when income is not very much distributed evenly, it means only few section would be able to demand. In that case, the demand would be lesser. Now we talk about the law of demand. We have, talked about it in bits before, but what is it? Other things remaining the same, there is an inverse relationship between the quantity demanded and the own price. And when we talk about other things remaining same, we have a term called ceteris paribus. This is a foreign term which is asked in the papers as well for 1 mark also, that what do you mean by ceteris paribus and what do you mean by other things in the law of demand other than the price of the good itself. The price of related goods, taste preferences, income, expected prices, all these are the other factors. So when we talk about law of demand, we have defined that there is inverse relationship. Then we talk about assumptions also. I always tell my students, do write assumptions as and when possible. So all other things like price of related goods, taste preferences, income, and expected prices in future remain constant. So these are 4 assumptions. All are assumed to be constant. Right. For this demand, we have to show the diagram as well as the schedule. Schedule simply talks about the inverse relationship. When it is falling, it is rising, and it can be any figure, any data from your side. And this downward demand curve, as I told you before also, it's no more scale shown here. So scaling is not required on X and Y axis in economics. It's majorly the trends which we need to see. So assumptions are given, as I told you, taste preferences, income, and then the price of related goods, and near future prices, etc. No expectation change. So all these are constant. The constancy is the assumption. From this topic also, we do have income effect and substitution effect, most often asked in the papers. So let's understand. The question says why more of a good is purchased when its price falls. So we actually have to simply justify this demand curve, that when the price falls, the quantity rises. Right. So its first point is law of diminishing marginal utility. Diminishing marginal utility, we have read before in our previous chapter that as and when we tend to have more and more of a good, our satisfaction falls. So when our quantity increases, our satisfaction is falling. Then why for falling satisfaction we would be paying the same price? The price also we would be paying lesser. So this becomes the base or the reasoning of why the demand curve slopes downwards. This question can be asked, why the demand curve has a negative slope. This is the other expression of asking the question, right? Then the second header, income effect. Now, when we talk about income effect and the students rise, when the income of a person rises, straight away a big cross is given. In income effect, income never changes. It's the real income of the person which changes. Real income means the purchasing power. And when we talk about purchasing power of the real income, let me explain the same with an example. Say a person has got 20 rupees with him. So his money income with him is 20 and he is having this value. There's no change in the pocket money he's having, right? And the price of something is 5. So he gets to have 4 units because 5 fours are 20. Right. But if there is a fall in the price from 5 to 4, he now is able to have one extra unit because again 4 fives are 20 in the same money. What does it mean? That with this fall in the price, his purchasing power or the real income has increased. And the vice versa also is true. When the prices rise, the purchasing power goes down, right? So because of this, we say that the demand curve falls, right? At price 4, he is able to purchase 5. But when the price rises to 5, he is able to get lesser. So the demand curve falls downwards. Again, the substitution effect. Now, when we talk about substitution effect, this is seen only in the goods which replace each other. See, when own price of good X falls, it becomes cheaper in relation to Y. Accordingly, X is substituted for Y. It is the expansion of demand due to the substitution effect. So more of that thing would be given, which becomes unbought, which becomes cheaper now. Then comes the size of consumer group. Simple it is. When, say, anything is very expensive, when the fruits come to the market for the first day, they're very expensive. So only few people buy the same because they are priced here. So the people who are buying are lesser. But when the price of the things falls, people now are demanding it more because now it fits into their pockets. So hence the demand curve slopes downwards. Wherever we are able to justify that with fall in the price, the quantity rises, there we are able to again say that's why the demand curve falls downwards, right? And different uses means, say we talk about mango, when the prices of mango fall from say 100 to 50, now people do not merely buy it for just having it as a raw fruit. They make custard, they make ice creams, they make shakes, they use it for, different things, sweets and all. So they buy it more. So the quantity demanded is more. Hence, because of the different uses also of the things, the demand curve of the things do go downwards. And then comes the law of, or the exceptions to the law of demand. So here, what would we be talking about? We'll simply talk about in which all cases when the price rises there or fall is there and the quantity is not changing, or in other words, I'll say when price rises and demand falls, this relationship is not observed. Try and understand. We see the different relationship, either both of them are rising or both of them are falling, or without any change in the price, the quantity is changing. So let us see all those cases. The distinction articles, right? This is called, Veblen effect because this was checked by Sir Veblen. He said that some things like diamond has its uniqueness because it's unique and it's not found everywhere. So those who are wearing diamond buy it just because that is priced higher. So those rich people, those who want to be unique and those who want to show the preciousness of the thing, right? They buy it more when its price rises. So this is called, this is again the exception to the law of demand, and this happens in the case of articles of distinction. Again, we see it in precious diamonds, etc. Giffen good, Giffen good, again, it was taken up by Sir Giffens. It's a special quality of highly inferior goods. There is a story behind it. But you must understand for now that here what was observed, despite of rise in the prices, the quantity again rose. Okay, let me explain it in just a small story. This was observed by Sir Giffen that during wartime, people used to behave this way. How and why? They had the combination of the inferior goods like potatoes, right? Potatoes or some coarse grains and meat, right? So this combination was there in their main meals, and because wartime was there, so the prices were rising for everything. So meat simply went beyond their limits, and because they had to satisfy themselves, so irrespective of high prices of the potatoes, they had to replace the meat component by potatoes. So what did he find? These are those inferior goods which show a rise in the quantity irrespective of the rise in the prices. And irrational judgment means some people are having this mindset that, oh, if the prices are rises, so it must have the good quality, so I should buy this one. So they are driven by this ignorance, and hence this leads to the exception of demand. There are a few more concepts like addiction. Now, what is addiction? Addiction means we need to have that. So, irrespective of high price, people demand more because they are addicted to that thing. Okay. So, let's go ahead. After this topic, we have demand curve slopes upwards when the law of demand fails. As I've told you, that negative relation doesn't hold good. So we have come to the closure of this video as of now. In the next topic, we would be covering the change in the quantity demanded versus the change in demand. Till then, study hard. I'm waiting for your comments and rewards. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.